Welcome to the Inner West Library Australian Music Month Speaker Series. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Gadigal and Wongal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Darren Cross has been performing in the Inner West since 1993, first with Gerling, with whom he found a measure of success, releasing 4 albums. Lately, he has been performing as DC Cross, exploring solo instrumental guitar pieces informed by the Australian environment. Welcome, Darren.
Hey, good morning.
As a performing musician, what were your favourite venues to play in the Inner West, and as a punter?
As a well, with both, I guess the Annandale Hotel, that was quite legendary for me. Where Gerling actually had our studio above the Annandale Hotel for a couple of years. But yeah, around the time that before and during when the Rule Brothers owned the Annandale Hotel, that was pretty amazing. I mean, I saw lots of amazing bands and had some wild nights there, and Gerling played a lot of cool shows there. We used to do a Christmas show each year, which was pretty much on the map for everyone. Another venue was the Globe in Newtown, which was kind of short-lived, but that was pretty cool as well. I remember Gerling played, we brought the Avalanches up for some of their first Sydney shows when they were doing the hip-hop thing, but yeah, there was lots of cool bands used to play at the Globe. The Sando, that was the place I used to hang out when I first moved to Newtown in the early 90s. That was pretty amazing. I mean, all the local bands would play there, and I don't know, everyone talks about the Sando, how good it used to be, but it was pretty amazing. Just walk in there and grab a beer and see wild creatures go crazy, play music. So that was cool. Feedback above Newtown Station, that was pretty short-lived as well, but that was, I don't know what it is now, but the Dirty Three played there, and Nick Cave and Noah Taylor sung one night. They would crank it as well. It was so loud. The loudest band I've ever seen in my whole life was a Brisbane band called Scream Feeder, and they played there, and I saw like a lot of shows, but it felt like they were ripping my eardrum apart with a Stanley knife. It was crazy. The Petersham Bowling Club, a few years ago, it's kind of turned into a big children's playground now, but about, 12 years ago to 8 years ago, it was when it first started doing music again. A guy called Mark Lucas was booking it at that stage, and yeah, it was pretty special. Of course, at Enmore Theatre, to see bands. I think Gerling only played there a couple of times. I think we played there once with Silverchair. We got told off by their manager, their management, for standing side of stage, and we all got absconded to the garbage depot because we are were being naughty. But yeah, I saw heaps of like amazing bands at Enmore Theatre. But these days, Vic on the Park's a great place to see wildly different bands. Most of the bolos are great. Marrickville Bolo, Petersham Bolo, and now the Bolo at Pratton Park. I went and saw a gig there the other night, and that was pretty cool.
So you mentioned before about when you first moved to Newtown hanging out at the Sando. Was there like a local scene of bands there? Were you a part of that? What was it like when you were there?
Yeah, I don't know about local scene. I mean, kind of got a girlfriend and then moved into this house in King Street, which didn't even have a roof. I lived in this bungalow that didn't have a roof out the back, and that was my first introduction. I kind of fell over a fence and met this girl, and then I stayed with her. So I wasn't really part of a scene as such. I think I was kicking around with some other musos, but they were from Perth anyway. So it was, I guess, coming from Western Sydney, I didn't really know anyone, and I kind of felt not really part of what was before. So I just was more insular. So I can't really tell. Yeah,
Like that Sando scene with like Front End Loader and those kind of bands. They weren't really welcoming, or you weren't a part. Like it was just peripheral to you.
yeah, it was. Yeah, I would go all the time. It wasn't. I would not even know what was on. Like that's what the centre was like. It always had such good quality music. You just walk past and there's like that's how I first saw the Dirty Three. I'll talk about them later as one of my memorable gigs, but I saw them first at the Sando, and to this day they're like my favourite bands. So it just it was just of the time as well. I don't know. There was lots of heavy music around the grunge era that was really resonating with me, and a lot of local bands are really like giving it their all. But yeah, you'd see Friend and Loader, or you'd see Whopping Big Naughty, or you'd see Bernie Hayes or Lewis Tillett, or all the bands that Pete Kelly was in. I can't remember. Yeah, it was just, I don't know about scene. It was just about the music, really. Especially when you're that young, you don't really give a damn.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to see. For me, it was just about the music, so I'd go and see as much as I could.
So what was one of your most memorable gigs, and why? What happened at it?
Okay, I'd have to say my favourite gig in the Inner West was Pavement played at Max's Petersham, which is now, I don't know, some strip bar or something.
Yeah, it's an adult establishment now. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that was May 22nd, 1993. And at that stage, Pavement from America, they were my favourite band. And they played 3 nights at Max's Petersham. And the first night, it was Magic Dirt's first ever gig. And it was funny because it had a front bar and they had band in there. And then they had a back bar. And that's where the main bands played. And this was like a Steve Pavlovic kind of idea, who, brought out Nirvana and Beastie Boys and all that. So to get Pavement when they were full on at their most powerful was pretty incredible. And I'd met Magic Dirt and I said hi to them. And actually I said, in between all the music, because I was like 19, I was like, oh, can I get up and do a song? And Adelaide's like, yeah, sure, go, little crazy guy. So I was really into the Boredoms, a Japanese noise band at the time. And so I just did this really bad cover of Venus by Shocking Blue. It kind of sounded like Sonic Youth falling out of a helicopter, and everyone kind of just stood around and 2 people clapped. But then I went into the front bar and saw Pavement, who were touring Slanted and Enchanted at that time. Yeah, and, the drummer, Gary Young, was still in the band, who's notoriously crazy, and he was walking around ripping out pages of a book of Jaws, giving out pages to people, and just Pavement was so good. Like, they were at their height. They were just... Anyway, so that was amazing. Another excellent gig I saw was the 20th of December, 93, and that was the Dirty Three. They played at the Sando. I remember I was just walking past, you'd go and grab a beer and stick your head in there, and I didn't know who these guys were, and they changed my life, really. They've been my favourite band ever since.
This would have been pre-Horse Stories, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
This was maybe their second time up. I think they did play at Kinsella's and somewhere else. But I had no idea what was happening, and, Warren Ellis was like a young crazy. They were all crazy, I just walked in there. I remember I was like, Warren, there was spit and bile flying everywhere. I was right up the front and had to stand there with my hand over my schooner so I wouldn't get any like saliva in it. Yeah, that was just, I just, then I think the next Sydney show they might have played with Pavement, but that was at the Phoenician, and then they just went off. And yeah, that was the last that Warren lived in Australia, I believe. Another amazing show, or a night, it was the 23rd of January 2003. Gerling were doing the Big Day Out national tour. So we had all these free tickets, so you can go and see, all the side shows. And being a music lover that I am, I kind of went to as many as I could. And there was one night in particular in Sydney, I went and saw, in the Inner West, actually, I went and saw Kraftwerk at the Enmore. And then they're my one of my favourite bands as well. And then I split the night in between, and then I caught a taxi over to the Annandale, where I saw this bloke called Chili Gonzalez play.
Mm-hmm.
And he's this like kind of smart-ass Canadian who is this music genius. But yeah, at the time, Feist was in his band, and no one knew who she was, and they were all wearing tracksuits and stuff. But he had a baby grand piano on stage at the Annandale, and it was the night that it was the night one of the Bee Gees had died, and he opened the show with "Staying Alive." Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's one of the the craziest I thought I was going to implode. I just thought you can't be more punk rock and funnier than that. And he's amazing, and I've been in love with him ever since. I actually saw him in Berlin twice, 14 years ago and I think 8 years ago. But yeah, Chili Gonzalez, amazing. Other notables, I saw the Stone Roses at the Enmore Theatre, original lineup, 4th of October 95. And also Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds in 2003. Yeah, amazing. So they've been my favourite Inner West gigs.
A lot of those that you just mentioned were other people playing. What about gigs you played yourself?
Oh, okay. Yeah, Annandale Hotel for Gerling. For Darren, the Darren DC Cross stuff. I played a few shows at the Newtown Social Club as well. Oh, which I forgot to mention. Newtown Social Club, when it was going, it's some horrible putt golf place now, which I won't be setting foot in. Yeah, the Newtown Social Club. I played some of these folky night. There was this Japanese sound guy, and they used to do some, I forget what it was called. It was like a Wednesday acoustic folk night. Yeah, I played a couple of them, and they were just like, he just was this amazing sound guy, and it was all people there, and that was pretty cool. I mean, the Vanguard, that was cool as well to play at for me. I played with Jep and Depp there a couple of times, which is a folk duo I do with Jessica Cassar. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Where else? Yeah, the Sando. I played at the Sando a bunch of times with Gerling. I remember once it was at grunge as well, so you could kind of smash stuff and people would kind of accept it. But I remember once I went crazy and I went angry and I was jumping up on the bar and putting a hole in the roof with the head of my guitar, just like trying to make the roof come down. Yeah, it could have been the last time I played there, but yeah, that's a couple. But I think overall the Annandale, when the Rule Brothers owned it, that was pretty much...
They were very supportive and...
Yeah, absolutely, and it was just the crowd would come, there'll be people really enjoying themselves and our friends and family, and, it was not one bad vibe there. Everyone was just having a party, so it was just such a cool time as well. Like, everyone was a bit more not scared or something.
More open, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess everyone was younger, so it was all,
bit more free. Without lockout laws or anything like that.
Yeah, before all that cloud come and covered our city.
Indeed. Having been creating in the Inner West for a large part of your life, what stands out about it for you?
Yeah, I guess it's changed a lot. I guess when I first moved here, it felt like everyone was a bit left to centre, it was cheaper, and so, I don't know, it kind of didn't bring in the kind of more property breeding types, which it's kind of, that's what it's turned into now, but I guess that's just a natural...
Gentrification,
yeah. I mean, I won't harp on about that, but I don't really like gentrification or any of that. So it's changed in terms of that, and the affordability for musicians and artists to stay. I think development is making the place look ugly and destroying the views we used to be able to see. That's just whatever. That's just how life goes.
Yep.
It used to be back in the day when I was in the 90s, Newtown and the Inner West was crazy and it was cheap. It was like, the best thing I think about it now is you can take your dog to the pub.
Sorry, have those changes affected your creativity?
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually, with a few of the music, the arts that I've done, projects I've done, it's been a big part of an anti-gentrification kind of thing. But yeah, definitely, it changes our life, and you have to maybe work more to pay the rent, or struggle a bit here or there. It definitely does change it. I also think for gigs as well, now after COVID and just before COVID, I know one bar in particular who, they'd have more people come in if it was a whiskey tasting night, so they would, stop the music, the band's playing there. But that I understand that, because they have to pay exorbitant rent now in the Inner West because everything's gentrified, and it has a roll-on effect to places and venues who need to make money to survive. And this was even pre-COVID, so that I think the gentrification and all that, and making everything more expensive, has a massive trickle effect onto everything. It's good for the people with the money, but the people without the money, it's a bit, I don't know, it's harder.
Yep.
And for smaller independent things, not only bands, but companies and also, venues, it's hard. It's hard now. It's harder than it used to be. So that does have an effect, I think.
Mm-hmm. What were some of your favourite inner west bands from that 90s era and now?
From back then, there was a band called Midget.
I love that record.
Yeah. I think they were one of the most powerful bands I've ever seen live. I remember this one show. I think I might have even been underage, but they played it downstairs at the Lansdowne when it was on the other side. This was, I think Shellac played there. Pav brought them Shellac out there. But yeah, Midget, man, they were just like, wow. They were so ferocious and just, they were just powerful, very powerful. Another band who I still love is Crow, with Peter Fenton and Jim, not Gin. But yeah, they were pretty amazing. I mean, I used to see them a lot when I just finished high school.
Did they do that gig with Pavement at Max's?
Yeah, they actually did, yep. There's that famous picture of Steve Malcolmus wearing, at the third night of that run of shows, and he's wearing a Crow shirt. I've actually got a photo of me. I'll send you that through, of that Pavement show, me in the front bar. And the Apartments as well, originally from Brisbane, Peter Milton Walsh, but he's been kicking around the inner west for more than 20 years now.
He was in the original lineup of the Go-Betweens, right?
Yeah, that's right. And he was in the Laughing Clowns as well.
Oh, wow.
Ed Cooper's.
Yep.
I think he played bass in there for a little bit, but the Apartments, they were on a John Hughes film as well, Some Kind of Wonderful, one of their tracks, Shyest Time. So yeah, Peter and it was on Rough Trade, but Peter's been doing music ever since, and I've become friends with Peter, and I work with him and stuff. So the Clouds also, back when the 90s, I mean, no, such an underrated band. They were doing that grunge, girl, female singing Pixies type thing before, heaps of bands were. And they were writing like cracker songs as well, like amazing hooks, and they were cool as hell. Yeah, that's a couple of bands. Music I like now, well, of course, the first one I have to mention is my partner in crime, Jessica Kassar. We did a thing. She's a singer, songwriter, also producer now. She's working on a third album. I was in folk noir duo with her called Jep and Dep. But yeah, Jess is amazing. She's my partner in crime, so I'm a bit biased. Yeah, I am jessicavox.bandcamp.com. Check her out. I really like Buddy Glass as well, which is Bruno. People might know from Peabody. He's just doing a solo thing, and I actually saw him at Pratton Park last week, and yeah, it was a great night, great songs. Gary David, they're a great weirdo fun band. Got a bunch of all crazy guys from other different bands that kind of play around Mosh Pit Bar and stuff. But yeah, Gary David, I love them. Their next level got nuts.
Your band Gerling embraced technology and dance genres in a way that other guitar bands from that 90s era didn't. Was there hostility when there were more keyboards on stage than guitars?
It was more hostilities from the roadies and the old fart sound guys, to be honest. That was the only hostility we ever got. I mean, maybe it was more work for them and they didn't like dance music. I don't know. It was a different time. For us, it was fine. I think, not that I identify as a woman, but to be a woman back then, it would have been a hell of a hard time, like old misogynist sound guys and that. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad that's kind of changed. But yeah, I think we're lucky with Gerling. I mean, people either loved us or had no idea who the hell we were. So whenever we played, it was just all people having a good time. And we're always trying to put on a great show that incorporated those new dance sensibilities. So it was all about having fun. We were lucky in that respect. It was definitely more loved up than hostility at our shows, that's for sure.
Raves and techno were big in the 90s, and Gerling started out as a 2 guitars and drums band. Were you drawn to any other genres, and how did quote-unquote indie rock sit in that overall scene that you were a part of, I guess, with the Fellaheen label and stuff like that in Sydney, in your opinion?
Yeah, once again, I'm not really sure. As we were kind of in the eye of the storm and we're working so much, it's hard to pass judgment on the scene as such. I mean, we're just way too busy and we're very insular, to be honest. There was lots of UK indie bands that were incorporating dance elements at that time, like Jesus and Mary Chain, Primal Scream, all the Moax stuff, which really blew the door open for us. And we were encouraged by that, and that came naturally to us. Also, technology became real cheaper. So, being more do-it-yourself, we grabbed everything we could and squeezed a track or a sound out of it. People were just ready to have fun back then, I think, at all different type of gigs. There's like indie rock, club, hip-hop, industrial, funk. Funk was massive back then. Rave was big as well, and we're just inspired by lots of groundbreaking music coming out at the time. Not to mention all the grunge stuff, and there's Boredom's Pavement, Beastie Boys, Daft Punk's first record. House music was massive. We'd go to like house nights and then Detroit nights, and indie guitar was cool at the time, sampling and recording at home on your own with a computer. Mm-hmm. It was just, I don't know, it was just a good time to make music. And
I guess the change in technology at that time, going from, say, 4-track cassettes to digital recording would have made a big difference too.
Oh, absolutely. Even the primitive stuff that was quite rudimentary. I mean, I remember Fruity Loops when it first came out on a PC, and it was kind of like, you could put loops on it and do electronic music and record your own guitar. And it was just like, oh, wow, what's this? And that was like just at the time that the internet was coming out as well. Yeah, I think just the availability, you didn't have to know Pro Tools and go to a studio and pay some gronk at $800 a day. Mm-hmm. Now you could buy some Povo PC and download a cracked version of Fruity Loops and off you go. I think that really did. I think also drugs as well. Like, I mean, I don't want to say I'm for or against it, but that definitely, the 90s was early 90s. A lot of ecstasy was first appearing, and opinions were changing. Mm-hmm. On music, on dance music especially.
Well, that would definitely change people's mindsets, right?
Yeah, definitely. And definitely shows, like, especially with Gerling shows, I don't think my mum standing on the side hugging the bloke that was sweating knew that the guy was probably on MDMA, but the thing is, it was more about love. I know that sounds cliched, and I'm not just saying that because, it was actually happening at our shows. And I think when that all happened, it took a lot of the anger that grunge was, and it becomes something else, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People are sick of being angry, sick of being sad.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, with the house and the dance and the indie dancing that was happening, which we latched onto immediately, it was really cool. I don't know, no one really cared that we were playing like Sonic Youth inspired guitar at the end of the show, but in the middle there was this full-on house set. No one cared. Like, everyone was like, yes, I'm here right now. And that was the thing about Gerling. We're here now, let's just have fun, so
mm-hmm. I guess that's what was missing from that grunge scene or whatever, the word fun.
Yeah.
Your newer material as DC Cross is very much about setting and scene. Your new album, very much so. I know that for that particular record, you went and recorded in regional New South Wales. What did you get from regional New South Wales that you couldn't get from the inner west?
With the DC Cross stuff, it's instrumental guitar, finger picking, and I like to call it escapist music, because I know that might sound pretentious to some, but I like people to put it on and just put their own narrative into the music. Mm-hmm. So with escapist, I guess I'm trying to escape the inner west, to be honest. I mean, I've lived here for 25 years or whatever, but yeah, I just love the open spaces of the Australian landscape, especially the Central West. I know places like Lithgow as well, which I really love. I don't know, there's just a history and a criminality to it, and the environment and the weird mountains, and I don't know, I just can switch off and just go with the music. I'm not reminded of, materialism, which I am reminded of in the inner west, and there's lots of rich people driving around in their Porsches and, got these horrible big box houses that they've knocked down a small, beautiful old quaint house and made these horrible new developments. So I don't want to be thinking about that. I just want to be thinking about the music and going into the rural areas. I can just be myself and just concentrate on the music, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's about space, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And you hear that in the music. There's a hell of a lot of space because it's just the guitar, and you want to be able to look out the window and see the snow or the star-filled night.
So being instrumental, you're not forcing a narrative, but you still want to evoke a sense of place.
Yeah, some of the song titles are outrageously crazy, which don't really make sense because like one of the songs is called South Aubrey Takeaway Before the Big Rip-Off, which it sounds like a beautiful guitar song, which, people probably get married to or whatever, but I read it about this guy in Aubrey, mechanic who ripped me off, but you can't really... I give him these crazy titles, but once you put it on, you can't kind of just go wherever. It's a bit of a joke, I say that it's, I should have called it the honeymoon song or something, because I would have got more hits on YouTube or whatever, but I want people to have their own narrative. That's the whole reason why I do it. I think with vocals, it just adds too much. I mean, for some instances, that's great, but for what I want to say, I want the people to be inside the song and, navigating it themselves.
That was my last question. Thanks for your time, Darren.
Hey, thanks very much.
Thank you for listening, and look out for upcoming digital content through the Inner West Library and what's on social media channels. See you next time.